Hello, and welcome to Think Like a Cybercriminal, exploring the 6 stages of advanced ransomware threats. Today's webinar is sponsored by Veeam and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm the moderator for this great event today, and I'm excited to be here with you guys. So before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping details that will help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in our webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. That Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh is going to fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues. But if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we'll work with you to get things working for you again. Second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to the first resource in that handouts list. It's the 2022 Ransomware Trends Report. It's a 24-page report on some deep research commissioned by Veeam this year on ransomware trends, so very relevant to today's topic. There's also a copy of today's slide deck from Veeam if you want to grab that. You can find a link to the Gorilla Guide book club where you can get access to Actual Tech Media's great printed resources on technology topics, as well as a link to the ATM Event Center, which has our calendar of upcoming events. So I encourage you to access all of those resources now and share them with your friends and colleagues. Third, at the end of this webinar, we will be awarding a $300 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. Official terms and conditions of the prize are in the handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the link there. Finally, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenters. To help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. At the end of the event, we'll look at all the questions, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. And with that, let's get to today's fantastic content. It is my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. We have Edwin Wiedema, who is Global Technologist for Product Strategy at Veeam, and Brad Lynch, who's a Manager and Systems Engineer with Veeam. So Edwin, Brad, welcome to the event. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Scott.
Well, Edwin, I'll turn things over to you to get us started.
Yes, thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. So let me get controls there. There we go. Let's drive this. So think like a cybercriminal. What I'm doing in the field, if there are organizations or customers that are afraid of being hit by ransomware, they contact me. Or if they have already been hit, they also contact me. I'm in a lot of discussions with cyber forensics, law enforcement, insurance companies. So we know the way around there. So think like a cybercriminal. Let's dive in there. How do they think? Let me get that one. There we go. There we go. What we have seen in the field is a dramatic increase in frequency and severity of the cyber attacks. When I started 3 decades ago in the IT industry, security was always one of my passions. When I started to dive deeper in it and make sure that I become an expert, it was really a quiet, easy job. But boy, what do things change if you look at today's field and threat landscape? Because it has all to do with data, and every organization is now digital. And because of that data, we are being targeted. Not because the cybercriminals think the data is worth anything, but because the data is worth to you. And because you think the data has a value, they can ransom you for that one. But that's one of those things we will dive into deeper, because they're targeting you exactly. But how do they do that? So dive in there. We did a survey globally, and 3,400 respondents responded on our survey for the Data Protection Trends Report. Luckily, I and one of my peers were able to sneak in some of those cybersecurity questions. And because of the cybersecurity questions, we got some really nice feedback. That's also why in the section where there is a ransomware trends report that's coming after this. This one were some of those probe questions we wanted to know how it's out in the field. And what we saw, I was really shocked. 24% of organizations were not being hit, but 76% already suffered some sort of ransomware attack. And if you look at that, that's amazing in a bad way. But also those 24%, they were truly honest and they said, we are likely unaware that we have been hit. So that's a good thing to think about. So let's dive in how cybercriminals work. Because a lot of people say, oh, ransomware's come in and that's the end of it. No, that's true. That's the end of the chain because that's the last shekel and it's the one that's most visible. But the cyber breach occurred months and months in front of it. So 6 stages of an advanced ransomware attack. The first one is observation. They will just observe what you're doing as a business. And to make that a little bit more clear, let's dive in there. Let's pick a target. Take myself as a target. So what will happen if they see someone and they want to have a target there? They will just Google, and it should be Googling there, but it stops there. But what happens is normally they will just Google you. They see a person of interest and they will start Googling you. And if you start Googling my name, Edwin Redemer, you will see that I'm working for Veeam, that I have a blog, veeamguru.com. But also I'm on Twitter for @Viperian. And that @Viperian also has to do with the hacking community from the past, of course. So in that observation, what they will do, they will go to Twitter and you will see there's a post. It's a personal post, nothing really fancy on it. You will see it's a local tournament. Is he a volunteer? WVF, what's that? Veeam? Hey, Veeam, he's working for that, so that should be tied to that one. He's a soccer referee. Most likely, if you're walking in that suit and doing a soccer match, you might be a referee. But the most important part is in the bottom, because that's the metadata. And the metadata gives where I live, I'm in the Netherlands, and I use an iPhone. Those 3 things are important for a cybercriminal because they will target you. They will go to LinkedIn. They will see, okay, that's that particular guy again. He's working for Veeam Software. Let's click that link. And if you click that link, you will see that LinkedIn will open the company where I work for. And you will see that all of a sudden, it's not one target. The target range became a lot bigger. That's also what we're seeing in the field. That's how people come in. They will just do social engineering, observation. Let's see who there is. Then they will move to the second stage. And they will try to sneak in, gain access to the victim. So they will send an email. For instance, an email about a soccer referee, maybe some good opportunity to buy particular clothing or other things that could be interested for a soccer referee. And they will flip it around and make sure that it's modified and customized for that particular person. So some examples. A sneak in easy. If you look on this email, you will already notice that some things are fishy and some things are off. Especially when there is click here, a link. And if you hover over it, you will see. And please do not enter this. I've done this session many times before and I had to remove some of that link because people were curious. And that's one of the natures of people. People are curious and they want to know, okay, where's that going? But if you open that link, you get a Google Doc towards you, you have a Word macro and it will fire up directly. As soon as it fires up, it will drag in more extra features for your computer. So moving in to another one, that was a hard one, and that's also targeted towards me. I was buying something on Amazon, and within 30 seconds, I already got an email saying, oh, we're going to deliver you. And I was looking, hold on, that's really fast. And normally they are not that fast. It takes 5 minutes before the email comes in. So I was triggered by the time it went in. But everything was in order there. Only thing that was not in order was the purchase order. It was completely different than what I saw on the screen. But even the delivery address was correct. So I ran this through my lab and through my sandbox, and then I saw that there was something hidden behind it. But it's also, even for a data defender, can be really hard, especially when you have an off day and you're really busy and just click that link because you want to know when the package arrives. So that's about the phishing. Don't get hooked. That's all the thing about social engineering. They will try you out with some emails. Try to click on a link, and because if you click a link, this will happen. You get emails all day long, and all of a sudden you click one of those emails. And by clicking one of those emails, you will connect to the internet on a bad way. You will drag in some extra features, some malware, and particular parts they will need as a cybercriminal to get access to your machine. As soon as that malware fires up, it will open the door to the internet. It will send a signal to the cybercriminal. Okay, to the command and control center, we have a winner. We are in. So there is something going on. They can access your machine. And because of that entry point, and they don't even have to be an administrator at that moment in time, they just want to snoop around. And that's also where we go for there. So 90% of those malwares comes from email. So you can throw up a lot of firewalls and a lot of protection, but those emails coming in with links. So education is important, and we'll zoom into that later on. So note that most targets target data, but they reach that target by hijacking accounts. So username and password. And some people, well, we've seen 60% of people or more are using the same username and password for multiple different logon situations. So if you log in for Amazon, for instance, and you also do that for other websites, and you have the same username and password, that can go wrong badly if they find out which username and password combination you're using. And they will try it out on all those different websites. So let's go to stage number 3. They're going to set up shop because they are just a user in the system. The only thing they want to do is look around, create a base of operations, making sure that they keep access to your system or even to your infrastructure. And what they will do is they will just fire up more and more entry points. So it could be that they set more phishing emails to co-workers of me, for instance, to make sure that more people click that link. And they could also use my email address to send out that particular email to my co-workers, because those co-workers will think I'm a valid person, they will trust me, and they will click that link. And at that moment in time, they have more entry points into the infrastructure. So setting up shop there. What we have seen, and this is a real life example from a customer in 2020. They were in the system and they were snooping around, and they found out that there were still Windows 2003 R2 systems there. So they gained the system account. Couldn't do anything with it yet, but they could snoop around and look what was hiding behind that system account. And because of that system account, they got to the next stage, and that's elevate access. And because of the snooping around and having some of those accounts that they see are higher targets, higher value targets, that makes that interesting. And this is a complete timeline, and we will zoom into the timeline later on also. So what happens after clicking a link? Just to summarize. The link is clicked in the background, another document was opened, contained another macro, and there was a downloader in there. And it was a valid downloader. So no malware, no virus scanners would pop up and say, "Oh, there's something going on." No, that was a legit piece of software coming in. But that one dragged in other pieces of software that were not legit. So a RAT was deployed, so a remote access tool. And because of the remote access tool, it was hiding in the registry. Every time the machine booted up, they had access. So as long as that machine was online or on, they had access to the infrastructure. And they have a call home function. That's that moment where you saw that ping going back and forth to the internet. So they have a command and control on the internet, and every 15 minutes they get a ping from all the systems that have been compromised. So they started snooping around. And I must say, now, I'm a little bit jealous. I've seen the documentation they did from that infrastructure. And you and I, we don't have that time to be such clear about how things are working and document that in a really fashionable and stateful way, and also really in depth. So stage 4, elevate access. They got access to the 2003 machine. And what they did, they watched that machine till a domain admin logged into that system. And because a domain admin logged into the system, they could grab the username and password for the domain admin. So they could get control of the Active Directory there. And from there, they could just move to different systems. Try that account, see where it has access. So the domain admin was found as an interactive logon. And what happens, as soon as they have administrative privileges to the infrastructure, the castle was fallen, or has fallen there. And that's always a hard thing to swallow. Because they only had one account, it was a user account, they elevated to an admin account because someone logged in interactively towards that server they were monitoring and watching. And at that moment in time, they had the full Active Directory to their disposal. And they will deploy a lot of extra software there. So they did software distribution, they did keyloggers, they did port scanners, even SOX proxies there. Just making sure that they have a full control of the infrastructure they're going to take as a victim and take for a ransom. Then we go to stage number 5. They will cripple recoverability. So what they do is they will look through the infrastructure and see where they can move documents, delete documents, any procedures that are stored there, even password libraries, password managers. If they can remove that, they will. But also backups. So what we saw, they started to purge documents. And those were the procedures about the disaster recovery plan, how to do particular things, but also communication plans. In case of emergency, who should I call? That was the first document that was being erased. The document was still there, but there was nothing in there. It was a blank document. So as soon as you opened it, you saw, nothing there. But the document is still there. So nobody was triggered that there was something off and also something was gone. So after that stage, what they did is, okay, we remove documents, procedures, move to the next one. Make sure that we have software distribution going on. And I must say, automation and orchestration is often a key part of a cybercriminal that is doing ransomware attacks, especially the advanced ones. So what they do is, okay, we will disable the Windows Defender on all systems, we will remove McAfee, and we will install malware, all automated and deployed. And what we have found in that particular system, the forensics party said that within 12 minutes, every system was had disabled Windows Defender, McAfee was removed, and the malware was installed. And I must say, can't be proud of that, but yeah, if you look at that, you're really, oops, there we are. They can do it really, really fast. But it didn't stop there. They were ready for encryption because those were shut down. But they looked through for the backups. Can we do something with the backups? And what they found out is the backups were in the tape library. So they made sure that all those tapes were nice, crispy, clean. So what they did is do a tape format through all those tapes, making sure that nothing is there anymore. The tapes are still there, but the data is gone. And that's like the 6th step. They go to the ransomware declaring because they already crippled the recoverability and they are in good shape to get paid. And that's where the ransom declare will pop up. And that's the last thing. And that's also the one thing people always see, the ransom declarement. So let's look through what happened. There will be a document popping up or a red screen or something else screaming at you, put in your bitcoins here. So running through the timeline, what happened? On October the 15th, there was the first breach, first phishing email coming in. Made sure that there was some legit software coming in through a website that looks legit, but if you really look at how it was formed, it was not a legit Microsoft website. On the next day, more and more rounds of phishing emails came in. So more people clicked that email, and 5 infected machines were already established within 2 days. And I went to another proper HTTP website. But also this website doesn't exist or is not from Microsoft itself. And what happens, the tools were being deployed into the organization. And they went around in the infrastructure to find all machines that had vulnerabilities that weren't patched at that moment in time. Especially when you have some old machines running, most likely they are really vulnerable because they can just scan, and that's the Meterpreter software, can just scan on all vulnerabilities, because that software is also being used for pen testing. So where you see where tools are being used for good, they can also be used for bad. And that's also what happened with the other tools. What we saw coming in is the Powersploit, the ping castle, making sure that they can just run around and scan everything, but also document all those steps, document the infrastructure, and also in a really detailed level. And then they started deploying some really serious malware there. Cobalt Strike, Meterpreter as tools, ping castle to make sure that they can find the right domain controllers. And to top it off, they added the tool AD-Find to get more information about the infrastructure and drawing out the whole Active Directory and how the forests were being built, the domains being built. And because of that, they could just go into the last stage. And this is where the ransomware was being dropped and was being deployed through automation. And within 25 minutes, 267 servers were a victim. And all the highly critical systems were encompassed in that particular batch right from the start. And if you look at the date, that is a Friday just before Christmas. That's always what we see. There's always a particular date where people are off having a holiday. There's a public holiday going on. We have one coming up in the US again, 4th of July. We will see more increased ransomware attacks at that moment in time, around that time frame. And as soon as it was dropped, the ransom was being declared. They didn't pick up the ransom declarement after that particular moment in time. It was the 27th or 28th, even, top of my head, when they found out that the system was being encrypted and that ransom was being declared. So because of those 6 stages, they will run through. But often also there are multiple parties involved. So some groups could do like the first 2 or 3 stages. They will sell off access to your infrastructure to another party. That other party could try to get elevated access, steal documents. Then they can even sell it off to another party, and that is the one that's going to do the ransom. And they will try to get as much money from you as possible, of course. And if that happens, all wheels and all cogs get in motion, and you will see that you're being a victim at that moment in time. And you're not the only one. There are so many victims out there. So how did ransomware enter? This is also one of those questions from the Data Protection Trends report we could snuck in. And if you look at it, it looks like a lot of technology involved, but it isn't, because almost half is about users. A spam email entering, an insider threat, malicious link. Those are the ones tied to people, and people are important in that. So let's dive in a little bit deeper, because then we have to look at the cybersecurity defense strategy. And if you look at the cybersecurity defense strategy, it's about data. Data is the core. And because of the core of all, you have to build around it, because the data became critical. Every organization is reliant on their data. If you go to your organization, you pull a ribbon around the police line, do not cross, make sure that nobody touches any system anymore. What can you do as an organization? What is still operable and what is shut down? Can you still do your business? Just thinking about that will give you an insight in how data is critical for your organization. But also it's sprawling. Normally you could touch it in your own data center, but in the last few years we have seen it sprawl all over the place. in your own data center, to a cloud, to multiple clouds, to software as a service. Data is all over the place for your organization now. But it's also growing rapidly. It's like bunnies on steroids, energized bunnies. And what we have seen in the past, that every 2 years the data doubles. It's now every 18 months the data doubles, and it is even increasing that pace. And that's shocking, because if we look at our budgets, I don't think your budget, even mine, are doubling every 18 months. And then we have to think about three things. Cybersecurity defense strategy is not just about technology. It's about the whole puzzle. People are most important there. So what we've seen, the entry point is often people. So to protect that, it also makes the most sense to help your organization's employees for awareness. But don't just stop at awareness. Also do exercises. Make sure that behavior is continuous being evolved. And what we have seen, organizations who have helped make sure that they do the exercises, they get that brain muscle memory. As soon as you have done some of those, people respond faster, quicker, and more accurate at an attack. And because they already know what to do, makes it so much easier to control damage and also make sure that you're back in business again much faster. And then you will have processes, because people will use processes, and those processes are being supported by technology. And if you look at it in that order, you will see that you have a good mixture in a cybersecurity defense strategy, because you have to invest in all three. But which one should get the most money is depending on, of course, on your organization. That's also why we align with a security framework, and we align with the NIST. Why the NIST is being commonly used out all over the world, and a lot of other frameworks are attached or use some of those components. And when I started with this one, what was really appealing to me is this is not about technology, because 95% of all people in organizations are not in IT. They have no clue. But if I talk about identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, and I talk about risk management, people think about their own particular part in the organization, and they can relate. And because of that they can relate, they can tell you what is important for them in their part in the business. And they can also tell you what should be protected and how fast it should be recovered. And that helps the conversation going much, much easier and much, much further. If you look at how we do it at Veeam, of course, we are also heavy in protect. Continuous data protection, it's about seconds. Replication is about minutes. And there's always like an active ready on the other side. We can use storage snapshots, leverage those. It's not a backup, but if you have storage snapshots, you have a moment in time, and that could be every 15 minutes or every hour. And what we've seen customers do is they cycle that for every day. So 24 snapshots, the next day they will just do it again. And because we can restore fast from those storage snapshots, that makes your recovery and your resiliency much faster. Also local backup, because you have those other things in play and already set up. A local backup could be for every 24 hours, an offset backup and an archive backup. So if you go clockwise, you will see from seconds to minutes to hours to days. And that's the protection strategy. And if we talk about the data management protection strategy, you have to think about these particular things. 3 different copies of data, 2 different media, and one of them is offsite. Well, we added 2 more, and that's one is offline, air-gapped, or immutable. What we've seen is that people ripped out the tapes because of tapes are being pricey in the overall management handling of tapes. That was where the big bucks are in tape. The tape itself is cheap, and also the media is cheap, but the handling cost about tape was expensive. But if you look at how cyber threats are bringing a much bigger cost associated to business being disrupted, being stopped, being ransomed, tape is coming back. But not for the long-term retention. What I've seen is that they use tape now for like the first 7 days. Why? Because they have a different media. They can store it offsite, and it's also a really good offline and air-gapped media, and they can even make it immutable. If you have write once, read many, you're already in business for those 4, 3, 2, 1, 1. But then the last one, and I have to pause for that a little bit, because you have to test your backups, test your DR, because if you don't do that, why do you even do a backup? So quarterly testing of DR and backups. Why? If you don't do that, backups are pointless if they don't work. And I've seen that many times, unfortunately. People coming in, having an accident there, or a ransom, so you have a crisis on the hands, they try to fire up the backups, and there's nothing on there, because they were wiped, or there was a cleaning tape necessary 6 months ago. Nobody noticed. They just moved the tape out, put a new tape in, the light was green, they went home, but after 5 minutes, the tape popped out because it needed a cleaning tape. So make sure that you test your backups, but also make sure that you test your DR. Because ransomware coming in and the whole organization being impacted is a crisis on your hands. So make sure that you know what to do. And DR goes much further than just the restore. So it's business continuity on top of that. So trusted immutability. And immutability is the one that's a lot of people think is the silver bullet, the holy grail. It's not. It's part of the total puzzle. It's an important piece in there, because if you look at immutability, it's about protecting against modification and deletion, and also even editing, but that's the modification part. So those two. And if you look at how we do the backups, we do a backup in an agnostic file. You can just pick up that file, place it somewhere else. If your production and also your protection infrastructure is being destroyed or being encrypted or ransomed, it's not available anymore, as long as you have the backup from Veeam, we can pop up a new installation in 5 minutes and start to restore. But now comes the important part. Because it's all in that file, or in multiple files, make sure that you encrypt those files. So on top of immutability, also do an encryption of your backup. So anyone stealing that file or exfiltrating that file should not have any opportunity to decrypt that file, to get access to your data. So looking at how we do backups, we have the Scala Backup Repository in Veeam. And you can do, the first step is performance tier. You can use the hardened repository. It's a Linux machine that has a flag for immutability, and we can control it through a policy. And because the first backups could land on that one, you have the first place of immutability, number 1. But you also see some dedupe appliances, directed test storage, and network test storage. Also on the dedupe appliance, some of those dedupe appliances, like the store once in version 12, we will have the possibility to steer and give a policy to the appliance to create immutability for 7 days, 14 days, depending on what you set on the policy. Then we move to the second one, the capacity tier. So offloading your backups for that second copy, you can do it on an S3 compatible. That's on-prem. That can be at a service provider, can be at another partner. Or we could go to Amazon S3 and we use object lock in those particular systems. And that object lock have an immutability flag. So for the policy that has been raised for immutability, 7 days, 14 days, or whatever time frame you choose, it will be immutable. That object will not be erasable or modifiable. So that's number 2. That's the double play. But now go through for the triple play. And the triple play, for instance, could be jobs to tape. And jobs to tape is an important part, because you have it on a different media, you can move it offline, that sort of thing. And because of all those, that's the real interesting part. My colleague Brad will zoom into a demo later on after this presentation, and he will show you some of those really interesting things which you could and could not do. And it's good to see how easy to handle it is and how you can work with that. But make sure that you have an immutable copy somewhere stored that's not available to anyone. Also not through insiders, because of the insider threat. Make sure that it's offsite and offline somewhere. And then we go to the other part, recovery. So the instant failover and instant recovery. Instant failover is tied to continuous data protection. Push of a button and it will fail over to the other side. Instant recovery is about firing up a workload from your backup. So within 2 minutes, you can have your service restored. And then in the background, make sure that data is being moved to a restore or recovery site, or even to production, depending on what happened in that moment in time. Then we have secure restore. Because if you have a wildfire going on, one thing, and that's the last thing you want to do, is introduce that wildfire again into an environment you're restoring. So run through secure restore, make sure that anything that goes through there goes clean to your infrastructure. And then we have like archive or retrieval. So that's also from like seconds to minutes to hours to days, depending on what you choose and what possibility you choose. That's also the beauty about Veeam. You have the options for choice and also the freedom to choose. But think about it like this. 95% of all organizations designed for backup, including myself. Been a solution architect for many, many years, and what we did in the past is, okay, we have to do backup, make sure that it's as cheap as possible, as small as footprint as possible, and make sure that the incremental fits in the 24-hour window. But that's the past, because there was 100% backup and we did 3 to 5% restore maybe. Now we have to do 100% backup. That's still the same. 100% restore. Hold on. That was the red screen screaming at you in the morning. Okay, place your Bitcoins. This is the slider. Please put them in there. You don't want to do that. You want to restore and make sure that you don't have to pay. That's where the 100% restore comes in. And then your infrastructure doesn't fit anymore because it was designed for backup. So we all have to look at our infrastructure and do it like a makeover and do a design for recovery. Make sure it is fast enough to do the restore. Make sure that you can recover those critical systems within the time frame you set. So you're not alone. 95% of all organizations designed for backup, but think about it and start thinking about new ways of doing the design. And that's also, if you look at the possibilities, what we deliver from Veeam, I already told you about that file, the backup file, the VBK file. There will be in the repository. There could be VMs, there could be physical servers in that file, could be cloud instances, but also file shares. And because it's compressed, deduplicated, those are backup files. And you want to do a restore. From that particular backup file, you have the options to go for multiple VM recoveries, a disk recovery, a database recovery, or even a NAS recovery. And the beauty is, it's still that same file. So you don't have to do extra particular things, particular jobs to have those granularity in restore. And that's also something I want to give with you. Think about it like this. Attackers only need to be right once. You and me, as defenders, need to be right all the time. So that's why I say secure backup is your last line of defense. So make it count. I would like to invite, there he already is. He's already in the starting grid. Brett, welcome. Brett is going to take you through a demo about how immutability restore configurations are being used and how it's been working. Brett, over to you.
Thanks, Edwin. Really appreciate it. That was a great overview on kind of how to think as a criminal, and I'm sure everybody agreed. So I'm kind of just going to help you guys picture that a little bit, see how Veeam can help with a lot of what Edwin spoke about. I'm sharing my screen, so if nobody says anything, none of the moderators said anything, I'm going to assume you can see my screen here. And I'm really going to highlight a few things, right? I'm going to really highlight that immutability piece, both on-prem and off-site, and highlight that testing piece that Edwin spoke about. And then also I just want to mention the recoverability piece, because that's always kind of the elephant in the room, right? You can do everything you want in terms of preparing for a ransomware attack, but if you don't have a true recoverable copy that you can recover quickly from, all of this is for nothing really. So let's get started with the demo here. So the first thing I want to highlight is that immutability piece. So here I'm going to show deleting a backup, right? So there's really two scenarios. Let's say a hacker gains access to your Veeam console. They're either going to try to immediately go delete your backups right from the console, And if that doesn't work, then they're going to try to access the device itself, right? And in the immutability piece with Veeam, let's say scenario one, I'm a hacker, I gain access. I'm going to go immediately and try to delete all the backup copies you have. And right, I know this says Hyper-V, but this could be VMware VMs, AHV, physical machines, doesn't matter. The same result here in terms of our immutability option for Linux repositories. And you'll see here that this is going to fail. It's going to say, sorry, unable to delete backups. You've set this for 7 days or 30 days, whatever you've set this for. And we can't delete that until that retention expires. Furthermore, right, this would be our on-prem. This would be our first destination. This would be our first backup copy we have, that 3-2-1-0 rule, that 3-2-1-1 rule that Edwin showed. So we see that our first copy is good, but we might also have an off-site copy to, let's say, object storage. And Veeam integrates with a number of S3 repositories, whether it's, we integrate with pretty much all of them, but in terms of immutability, it can be AWS, it can be EMC ECS, and App Storage Grid, Wasabi, Cloudian, the list goes on and on. There's a dozen, if not more. I don't remember them all off the top of my head. But then let's say they go and try to delete your secondary copies. And what you'll see here is the exact same result, right? So this is a secondary copy in AWS, integrating with AWS's object locked API feature, and they're gonna have no luck. This is gonna fail as well. And what's so key here is both in scenario one, where they access the console and try to delete it, they get access failed, but also in scenario two, if they try to go and access the Linux box or AWS directly, which I'm going to show in just a second, it's the same result. When we deploy the services needed on the Linux repository to make it immutable, we use single sign-on credentials. We don't store those credentials anywhere. So they have no ability to then gain those credentials through Veeam and SSH into that box. But on the offhand, if you want to kind of have a hyper healthy paranoia, I'll call it, and let's say they somehow gain credentials to SSH into that Linux box, it would have to be outside of Veeam though, because like I said, we don't store them. But let's say they do gain those credentials, you could disable SSH if you want. Once we install the services that are needed at the time of deployment, the first time, we delete those credentials, you could disable SSH on the box, and you're about as secure as you can get, right? So now in this scenario, they've been unsuccessful at deleting their primary backup as well as my offsite copy. Now, in addition, I'm shifting over here to AWS, and this would be identical, right, to any S3 immutable repo we support. Like I said, EMCs, NetApps, Cloudian, Wasabi, the list goes on and on. Let's say they somehow gain access into your AWS account, and they try to dig into here. I have a number of folders, the way I kind of organize my backups here. But I'm going to dig into one of these folders, and I'm going to pick several objects, and I'm going to delete them from here. And what you're going to find and what you might expect is the exact same result, right? It's going to fail. It's going to say, hey, you've set object lock to be enabled for X amount of days, whatever that might be for your business. And AWS has this super secure feature where you have to type in delete or it won't let you delete it. So I'll type in delete here. And same thing, right? Access denied. And this would be the same for any S3 immutable storage we support, whether it's one of the public cloud providers or an on-prem S3 provider, whatever it might be. Furthermore, this could be a root administrator type user in AWS to the point where they have the direct line into support. Well, support's going to tell them the same thing. You said your retention's 30 days, 7 days, 14 days, a year, whatever it is. You have to wait for that to expire because you've marked it as immutable. So that's kind of the first part of that, shifting back over to Veeam and show a couple more things, right? That's making sure you have a secure, safe backup. The next part of that is testing your backups, which Edwin definitely touched on. And we have that concept of sure backup. Same would apply for a replica or even a snapshot if you wanted it to. And this is actually testing your backup. So you could set this up at a cadence of your want. Let's say you schedule this every day, and you could get a report that would look like this. And what this is doing is this is literally, you could have a number of tests that you run to test your backups. Me specifically, I'm doing 2. And there's just one VM in this sure backup job. But on this ATL Nimble Windows VM, I'm doing a validation test and a malware scan, as you can see, and those both turned out to be successful. The validation test is essentially doing a CRC check. It's looking at the checksum of the blocks at the beginning and comparing it to now, and if it all looks good, we get a thumbs up. But we could also do a malware scan, right? We can actually scan this backup using a number of different malware AV scanning tools and do some deeper scanning. So that's kind of that high level report you could get on a daily basis, weekly basis, whatever you want. Just digging into kind of the details a little more here. You can see here in the logs, the kind of high level log stats that, right, it integrated with my AV scanning tool. It scanned my volume. If I had multiple volumes attached to this, it would do the same thing. And then going down to the bottom here, we see it did that backup file validation. So all the underlying VM files, the VMDKs, it went and made sure that the checksum matched. So, at this point, right, you make sure you have an immutable backup that's kind of safe in both those scenarios, the hacker gaining access to the Veeam console and trying to get access to the actual device itself. And then also next is kind of testing those backups. And lastly, it would be the recoverability piece. And not enough time today to go through all the recovery options Veeam has, but I do just kind of like to highlight and mention, in my biased opinion, Veeam has the best recovery options in the industry. And why I say that, right, is because not only can you recover from a backup, you can recover from a replica. And when I say replica, you could replicate to another virtual server and have a powered off VM ready to be powered on at any time. You could recover off your storage snapshot, which Edwin alluded to. We integrate with, I think over a dozen storage arrays, whether it's PowerMax, Pure, NetApp, HP, Nimble, the list goes on and on. Don't be offended if I didn't name the one that you have. So in terms of your recovery, your fast recovery options, that's what's so crucial and what differentiates Veeam more than anything, because you could do all the testing and immutable copies you want, but stuff actually hits the fan. You get an alert that says, pay me in Bitcoin. If you have something that can't give you a performing and fast performant recovery, all of this is kind of for naught. So I'll kind of close with that. Not a whole lot of time for the demo, but just kind of want to highlight a few pieces, with that. So I think we can open it up to any questions we might have, and hopefully that was helpful for you guys.
All right, super. Yeah, thanks for that demo, Brad, and thanks for the presentation, Edwin. And we do have a lot of questions that have rolled in already. Edwin, I think this first one is probably for you. This comes from Chris, and he's talking about your sort of 6-stage process that you went through. He's wondering how often are the attacks this sophisticated versus, starting with just sort of stage 6 from an infected endpoint.
Yeah, if you look at stage 6, it's like a drive-by shooting. If I say that, if it's just ransomware attack, normally it's aimed at consumers like you and me at home. So we click a link, and all of a sudden, ransomware fires up and starts encrypting all files it can find. If you target an organization, often that machine doesn't have any data itself, so you have to have a connection towards the data. So that's where those 6 stages come in. Especially about the ransomware attacks we have seen, it's always those 6 stages. Some don't even result in a ransomware attack because they do an exfiltration. They just want to grab some of those documents you have. They can sell that, or they use particular other bits and pieces within your from your infrastructure that they can make money of, so monetize. Most are those 6 stages.
Okay. This next one's pretty specific. Somebody's wondering if they can leverage the HPE store once data immutability feature.
Let me take that one. That's an interesting one. A new version V12 is coming out later this year that will enable and leverage HPE Store Once immutability feature.
Okay, great. Just one about how does Veeam restore from cloud to cloud?
You want to take that one, Brad?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to take that one. Yeah, so through the console that I just showed you, we integrate with our Veeam native plugins for the 3 major cloud providers, GCP, Azure, and AWS. And through that, right, you could take one of those native backups that we do, and you could restore them instantly in the VMware, or you could restore them back into one of the Azure or GCP clouds, or vice versa, whichever way you're trying to go. So that is, we have a big push on cloud data management. That's kind of one of our focuses. And what we see is if customers are on their journey moving to the cloud and maybe they're already fully in the cloud, that's kind of that next stage after that. Then they start to kind of go a multi-cloud strategy. And Veeam is keen on making sure we make it as easy as possible to move between those clouds. Now, we can't control the egress charges that you might have, but we can at least help you move between those clouds if it's needed.
Okay, super. There's a question here from Kenneth, and he's wondering about on the immutable backup, from Veeam. Is there any way that can be hacked or decrypted or I guess encrypted or wiped out by a sophisticated ransomware actor?
Yeah, let me take that one. Anything that's connected to a network and is accessible from somewhere else can be hacked. Doesn't matter if it's immutable, if it's stored, as long as it's not offline, you can always hack it. It's then the way how you can get access towards that one. That's also how we did the immutability part, making sure that the hardened repository single sign-on credentials, so the credentials aren't stored anywhere in Veeam or in the credentials manager, making sure that SSH is disconnected, but also make sure that like the remote console sessions are not available for the particular. And what we've seen that there are more and more solutions out there that have like a break class, even where two network cables come in, you have to send an SMS and it will open or shut that particular part. So yeah, I'm a hacker myself. Anything can be hacked as long as it's connected. But it's depending on how far you want to go. And a lot of those ransomware attacks are not going that far, because if it's easier at your neighbor, they will go to your neighbor. Because they are also, between brackets, lazy. They want to make fast money.
This next question comes from Shelby, who's wondering, what are some key places to look at our backups for finding things to simplify the backup and speed it up?
Can you repeat that question again? Sorry.
Yeah, Shelby's just looking for places to, I guess sort of common bottlenecks with backups as far as, performance issues as far as speeding up backups, which is, it's slightly outside the scope for today.
No. I mean, it's totally fine. Yeah, I mean, it could be a number of things, right, Shelby? So it could be network, it could be the actual IOPS on the disk performance you have of the repo you're going to. So as you know, and I can tell by the question, that's definitely the classic "it depends" answer in the IT industry. But I will tell you, and I alluded to in the demo, right, that is one of the things that can make Veeam kind of special compared to some other options out there. Is, for example, you could take the mission critical workloads, 10% of your environment, and you could make sure you back that up to a fast performing array, even Flash. I know that sounds crazy for backup, but I've seen customers do it. And then maybe the rest of your tier 1, tier 2 workloads go to, something a little more cost effective. So Veeam does kind of give you that option to design it to the best of your abilities while still trying to keep, overall total cost of ownership reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah,
Super.
and to add to that, Brad, we also have a bottleneck on every job. So it will show where the bottleneck is. So if it's on the source side, so we don't get more data incoming. If it's on the network side, if it's on the proxy, or if it's on the destination. So you can see the whole flow through from source to destination, and where we see as Veeam, as we do the backup, where we think the bottleneck is at that moment in time.
Super. Have time probably for a couple of more. Can Veeam also protect native cloud workloads, like for example, AWS?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that over. Yeah, so absolutely. All the three of the major public cloud providers, AWS, GCP, Azure, we protect them natively, right? No need for agents. It's completely agentless. For AWS, right, we can do EC2, RDS, EFS, VPCs. Azure, pretty similar, especially in our next version, which is just about to be released. GCP runs about kind of a version behind those two, so mainly their virtual instances, their cloud instances today, but we'll continue to add their file share and database workloads the same way we have for Azure and AWS today. So yeah.
Okay. Well, it looks like we're almost out of time. If somebody wants to get started with Veeam or find out more, do you have any recommendations?
Sure, absolutely. Sure. So, I mean, something that's really nice about Veeam is our documentation is all public. So you could probably Google Veeam University. You'll see a university site that takes you through a number of beginner, intermediate, advanced courses, whatever your flavor is. There's also a YouTube channel. So you can probably Google Veeam YouTube how to or something of that sort, or Veeam YouTube University. You'll get a number of videos that you could watch if you're interested. So some really good resources. And just in general, if there's anything you want to know about Veeam, I would say if you think it and then Google it, there's a good chance it comes up. We do a really good job kind of making sure our content is accessible for folks.
Yeah, reach out to us. And you can also download the Community Edition. That's the same software that organizations are using. The only thing is it's free for 10 workloads. It's the same software, so try it, use it. And if you need to drive like a proof of concept or a pilot or something, please reach out to the local Veeam team.
Okay. Well, Edwin, Brad, thanks for a great presentation. Appreciate the demo, the deck, and all your answers and insights here in the Q&A portion. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, and as we wrap up, we have one more piece of business. It's the $300 Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of the $300 Amazon gift card is Courtney Myers from Alabama. So congratulations to Courtney. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Veeam for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for your great questions today. That concludes today's event. Have a great rest of your day.